Hi, I'm James House. I'm a cloud architect for OnApp, and this video is going to talk you through our VMware vCenter integration and hopefully give you what you need to get started and provide more information if you're currently looking for a portal for vCenter. So we're logged in as an admin to the OnApp portal, and the first thing to mention is it's completely white label, so you can brand it to your company's with your company's logo and colors, use your own CSS, so you can make it look exactly how you want it to for your customers. We're logged in here, and what we're seeing is the admin dashboard. You get a brief overview of everything that's going on in your environment. So in this example, we've just got a single vCenter added. So we're seeing the total resources available in this single vCenter. You can add as many vCenters as you wish. So if you manage multiple vCenters, you can add them all in to manage them from this single interface, and you'll see a total of everything that's going on within your cloud. So there's useful figures like IOPS and things like that. You get an activity log, which shows exactly what's going on. If you've got end users building VMs, things like that. Everything's traceable. You can tell which user kicked off which task. So everything's available here in the activity log. And then down the left here, we see all the different configurations and settings. So what I'll do now quickly is, before we go into any more detail on how this is configured for VMware, I just want to give you a brief view of what it looks like for a user. Now, everything's based on who's logged in, which roles and permissions they get, and which resources they have access to. So as an example here, I've created a user and I've given it the standard OnApp user role. Roles are all configurable within OnApp, so you can take away permissions, you can add permissions, and pretty much everything you can do in the UI is configurable by permission. So it's very easy to sort of fine-grain your roles and permissions. So I'll log in as this user as an example. Another useful thing with OnApp is if you want to see what a user can see, it's very easy for an admin, if they've got the rights, to just log in as a user, so they know very quickly what resources they can see. So I'm logging in as my test vCenter user here, and as you can see, the interface is very similar. It's just a cut down version. So they get a view of what's going on in their proportion. So at the moment, this user's got no VMs running, so everything's at 0 currently. You get an activity log, which is related to their activities, so they can see what's been occurring in their cloud. And then you get a brief view of different things you can see down here on the left. So that's the user's dashboard. You access everything through the same URL. So you have your public cloud URL that your admins will access it from and your users will access it from. And it's all based on which role they've been assigned. So I'm going to go back to the admin area. So I'll briefly show you how we add in different vCenters. So if I go to settings, I click on compute resources. Now here we can add in various types of cloud. So at the moment we've got a single vCenter environment added in, and to add a new vCenter we just need to know the vSphere web client URL, and then you need an administrator account to that vCenter to be able to perform relevant tasks and pull out the details you need. So we've got a single one added in here. You can as well, using the same OnApp control panel, you can add in vCloud director instances, and you can also add in our KVM and Zen resources as well. So if you need more information on the other types of cloud that we manage from the OnApp portal, then head over to our website and you can see more information on that. So we've got a single vCenter that we've added in. If I click on vCenter here, you get a brief overview what's going on with this vCenter. You can see which release. So we support up to 6.7 currently. And then if I go to tools, I've got a few options here. I can import from vCenter. That just kicks off a sync, and it syncs all the networks, all the data stores and things like that. When you first add it in, it imports it anyway by default. We kick off a resync task every evening as well. So any changes made in the vCenter will be picked up by OnApp. But this option here, import virtual server, you get a list of all the VMs that are within your cloud, within your vCenter environment, and you can choose which VMs you want to import into the OnApp portal. And then you have to assign it to a user, so you could assign it to an admin user, or if you've already got one of your customers set up, then you can assign it directly to their account. So for example, I'll pick this imported VM and I'm going to assign it to my vCenter user, my customer. I hit submit, and that will then schedule an import of the server. It doesn't take very long, so if I click on virtual servers now, we should see this server has already been imported. So as I've assigned it to that user, if I go back to the user account, log in as a vCenter user, I can see now he's got one virtual server assigned to him. He can click on this vCenter here, and then he can power it on. Once it's powered on, he'll be able to access the console. So I'll power it on now, and we'll let that power up while we're having a look at a few other things. So we haven't mentioned licensing yet, but licensing for vCenter is done on a per VM level, and we only increase the count on your license for the VMs that you've imported into OnApp. So if you've got 1,000 VMs in your vCenter, but you only want to import 500 of them, then it's only the 500 that you've imported into vCenter that will increase the count on your license. Because we know that many VMs in your vCenter environments will be management VMs, and you won't need them managed by this portal. So the first thing to do before really you start importing VMs is to ensure that you've configured your zones properly. So we split things down into 3 types of zones. We have compute zones, which is for your memory and your CPU. Then we have your data store zones, which is for your storage, and then network zones for your networks. Now, when we first import vCenter into OnApp, it will group all of the port groups and all of your data stores into a single zone, which is named after your the data center in your vCenter. Now, this is fine to leave it this way if you are happy for any customers deploying VMs from vCenter to be deploying to any of the VMs within that, any of the networks or any of the data stores within that vCenter. But in most cases, you're going to want to split these between customers, or you might want to split them between tiers of storage, for example. So the first thing to do before you start importing VMs, or before you start deploying new VMs from OnApp, is to reconfigure your zones and make sure these are organized how you want it. So I've already done this in this environment. So our original zone, which everything was imported to, is this one, the data center network zone. But I've created 3 zones for the networks. I've created public network zone, where I'm going to add in my external public networks, customer network zone, which is going to be for specific customer networks. And then shared network zone is going to be for those networks that I'm happy for different users to share connectivity to. So if I click on my public network zone, you can see I've already assigned in a public network. Now, networks are imported as a DV port group. So one of the requirements of vCenter is that you have to be using DV switches and DV port groups for those to be recognized in OnApp. So we can see here that it's automatically imported the port group. I've assigned it to the public network zone, and in this environment we don't have any VLANs configured, but you might have VLAN back port groups, and OnApp will pick up those VLANs. So I've assigned the public one here. If I go back to our network zones, I've created a customer network zone, and I've assigned a specific VXLAN port group to this customer network zone. So that network's going to be available in this zone. If I go back to my networks again, I've then imported, or I've assigned this port group here, which is another VXLAN, into this network zone. So I've organized my networks into the various zones that I want to use. And I've done the same thing for my data stores. So if I click on data store zones here, when I first imported vCenter, it automatically grouped everything into the data center zone. and I've removed the relevant storage from that zone, and I've assigned it into two different tiers. I've got fast storage, which I've assigned here, and I've got slower storage, which I've assigned into my slow storage zone. Now, the reason we do that is because everything in OnApp is organized around buckets. So what buckets do is they organize your access to resources, so a user's access to resources, but also your the rates you're going to charge for those resources. So the first thing is to work out how you want to organize it is which users should have access to which resources. And if this is a fairly standard approach across all of your customers, all of your end users, then you might only have one or a couple of different buckets. If this is different for each customer, then you're likely to have a different bucket for each customer. So if I have a quick look at buckets here, I've created one bucket called vCenter plan. You can set some monthly pricing on it if you want. So maybe they've got a minimum contract price you want them to pay each month. You can configure at the bucket level which currency you want to use. So OnApp supports multiple currencies. But if I click on vCenter plan here, this is where I choose what access I want them to have, what resources they'll be able to access. And then all the billing information is configured under rate card. So we'll just look at access control for now. And we can see here we've added in our vCenter zone. So in this environment, we've only got a single vCenter, but if you have multiple vCenters, then you can choose which vCenters you want a customer to have access to, or which vCenters you want them to be able to deploy VMs to. And then automatically it will set all the limits to unlimited, which is shown by the dash here, but you can configure the maximum resources you want them to be able to use from that zone. So we're talking here about their resource limit. So you might set they can use a maximum of 10 cores. If I click edit here, might say they can use a maximum of 10 cores. And if I set that as 10 cores, that means they can either create 10 1-core VMs or 5 2-core VMs or 1 10-core VM exactly, and it will use that until they've reached the limit of their bucket. Now, if you assign this same bucket to 10 different users, they each get 10 CPUs or whatever you've set in here. The bucket isn't grouped between a number of users. Each user that's been assigned that bucket gets that individual pool of resources. And then I can do the same for memory as well. So I can set the maximum memory they want to use. In this example, I'm just going to leave them as unlimited for now. So they won't have to use. They'll be able to use as much as available that's in the vCenter cluster. So I leave those as unlimited, and then I choose which data stores I want them to access to. And this is why we split the zones down before we kind of get started deploying and importing VMs. So once you click the plus button, you'll get a list of the zones that aren't already added. So if they were all grouped together, I would just add the data store zone in. But I've actually decided I want this customer to have access to our fast storage and our slow storage. So they're going to have access to all the data stores I've assigned to that zone. And then same for the networks. So I've added in, I want them to be able to access the public network. I want them to be able to access their customer network and also the shared network. So they'll have a choice. When they deploy a VM, they'll be able to decide which networks they want to configure that VM for. Now here I can set maximum limits on IP addresses, for example. So this might be a common thing to do on your public network. You might want to only give them a couple of public IPs. So you can set a maximum limit here. This will only allow them connect to VMs. For example, if you set 2 IPs, it will only let them consume 2 IPs from that network, whether that's 2 VMs, each configured with a public IP, or 1 VM configured with two IPs. So that's the maximum limit of IPs. You can also set the maximum port speed as well. And then you can do the same for each network, but maybe your customer network and your shared network are internal networks, and you might not want to set a maximum for that. Right, so we've added in our resources. So any customer that's assigned this bucket is going to have access to this vCenter, these data stores, and these networks. So let's check what bucket we've assigned to our user. So we've got vCenter user here. If I go into edit this user, I can see here I've selected the vCenter plan. Now, you can change the bucket for a user at any point. So maybe you have different pricing points. So you might have more than one bucket, and halfway through the month, they might agree to go to a lower price point. Maybe they're consuming more resources, and you can change this at any point throughout the month, and it will update the pricing from then on. So we tend to do pricing hourly. You can also choose monthly as well, but if you're doing pricing hourly, then the price will be updated from that hour on, and at the end of the month they will get a bill for the part of the month that they were on a different plan, and the part of the month they were on the original plan. So we'll leave this set as vCenter plan, and we know they've got these user roles. You choose which user role you want this user to have, so we've just set them to the user standard user role at the moment. Just click save there. Right, so now let's log back in as that user. Users, vCenter user, and I'm now going to show you the deployment. So at the moment, he's only got a single VM. This is the one that we've imported and assigned to him. So if we'd set pricing in that bucket, he's going to be charged that pricing for this VM. So we'll click build, add virtual server. Now, I'll explain a little bit more about templates in a bit, but you choose exactly which OVA templates you want to provide to the user. So in this example, I've only got a single OVA uploaded, and I've assigned this template store to this user. So at the moment, they can just see a single CentOS 7 vCenter, but it's up to you which OSs you want to import, which OVAs you want to import, and you can assign different OVAs to different customers, or they can all be assigned the same template store. It gives you a brief overview of what the minimum template size is going to be, and as we go through the wizard, it will update the estimated price per hour, whether the VM is on or whether the VM is off, based on the when we change the values. So we'll click next here. You can give the VM a label, so VM3 we'll call it. VM3. You can specify a domain if you want. You can specify a password, but if you leave it blank, OnApp will generate one for you. So we'll leave it blank. Click next. Right, I will go into instance packages in more detail as well, but instance packages is just a way of setting t-shirt sizes for your VMs and setting specific prices for them as well. So you can see here we've pre-created small and medium, and we set specific prices, and the customer can see here, if I select an instance package of this size, it's going to cost me this much per hour when it's on, this much when it's off, and this is the overall month cost of this instance package. So this is a good way of controlling exactly what VMs they can build. Or if you want to, and again, this is, you can configure this in permissions to what you actually want them to see. You can decide if you want them to be able to build instance packages, or if you want them to actually be able to manually configure everything. Now, they will, all the options they get in this wizard will be based on the resources you've assigned to them in the bucket. So that's why we added the different resources in. So we'll choose which vCenter, which data center. Obviously, they're only going to be able to see what's available to them, what you've assigned in the bucket. They can assign up to the amount that you've set in the bucket. So there's a maximum limit. We left it as unlimited. So the maximum we're hitting here is actually the maximum in the cluster. So you wouldn't want them to create VMs that big. So it'd be better to set a maximum limit in the bucket. Let's say we'll create one with 1 GB of RAM. We'll have 2 cores. And we'll choose which data store. So because I've put both of those in the bucket, we can choose whether we want slow or fast. So I'll put this one on fast. That will show me the list of data stores that are within the fast storage zone. So you might only have one if it's shared storage, or you might have more than one. Do the default primary disk size, which you can increase if you want. And then networks, because we assigned all 3 networks in the bucket, they can see all 3 here. So if I only wanted them to consume their customer network zone, then I would remove the other networks out of the bucket, and this list would update accordingly. So let's create one in the public network zone. I want unlimited port speed, so that's just going to be the limit of the physical port. Choose public network. IPnet is any, so I'll talk about IPnets a bit more in detail in a sec. Click next here, so it updates the price. Because we didn't choose an instance package and we're building it manually, it's doing the price based on the rates we set in the bucket. Next, recipes. Recipes are a way of pre-creating scripts that you might want customers to run on their VMs, and you can provide a catalog of recipes. So it might be for installing software, it might be your managed software packages, things like that, and they can choose which ones they want to apply when they're building the VM just by selecting them here. You choose which ones they should be able to choose from. So I won't choose any at this in this demo. And then you get a quick summary of what they're doing. So they're building a CentOS 7 VM with 1 gig of memory, 2 cores, 3 gig disk size, and unlimited NIC. And then we're going to build and we're going to boot this server. So we're going to create this virtual server. Now what that will do, we'll see an activity log and exactly what that is doing. So the first thing it will do is upload the OVA from OnApp to your vCenter. If it's already been uploaded, then this step will happen pretty quickly. It will check that it's there. It then clones that OVA to a new VM based on the settings you provided here. It will then configure the operating system using standard VMware guest customization and VM tools, and then it will start up the virtual server. And once the server's started up, we'll see a console option here to be able to have a look at that server. So that is how you do your deployment. So we've shown you through instance packages, or whether you want to use the create server wizard. So you've got a choice on how you want to do that. So let's go back to the admin area, and I just want to talk you through the templates. So templates are either stored on the OnApp control panel. We can configure that when you first set up vCenter for OnApp for you, or if you've got a lot of templates you want to store and you want to keep them separate to your OnApp control panel, what we can do is install a separate server to store your OVAs on, and that's easily configurable within OnApp. So in this environment, I've just got the templates being stored on a separate disk on this control panel server. And then I have to choose which OVAs I want to upload. So at the moment we see that's in a pending state because we're currently deploying a VM from there. But you can choose as many OVAs as you want to upload. You choose which server you're going to store them on. So like I said, if you've got multiple places you want to store the OVAs, then you can have more than one, what we call backup server, which is where we store the OVAs. And then you choose a minimum memory size for that OVA. So if it's a Windows VM, for example, a Windows template, you might have a minimum of 1 gig or 2 gigs that you don't want people to use that template and configure any lower than that. You give it a label, and then when you click next, it will allow you to upload the OVA. It tells you the max file size here, which is at the moment it's just the limit of the disk, but you can also set a hard limit here as well. So you choose which OVA you want to upload, click save, and then that will upload it to the OnApp environment, and it's ready then for you to assign to customers. And the way we assign it to customers or assign it to users is we create a template store. So in this example, I've got a few different stores here, but I've created one specifically for my vCenter OVAs, and you choose which ones you want to add in here. So you add OVAs, and then you assign that to a user's bucket. You assign this template store to a user's bucket. So you might have different template stores for different customers. So that's how you upload your OVAs. So it's completely separate to vCenter. So if you're managing 10 vCenters, your OVAs are stored centrally in OnApp, and then when you deploy a VM to the vCenter, it will upload the necessary template to the right place. So another thing to show you as well is if you go to settings and go to networks. So network management within OnApp, you can create IP nets. So you can specify an IP range and which IPs you want OnApp to deploy from. So for example, if we click on our public network here, so this one was added into the public zone. You'll see here that we've got a IP network set up here. This is our range that we've provided. So when OnApp deploys a new VM, it will use an IP out of this range, and you can even specify which exact IPs you want a user to use. So you might have sold a customer specific IP range or a specific set of IPs, so you can actually assign them to that user, and you might say, right, I want him to have 10.10.100.49, and then he'll only be able to, once you've specified which IPs he can assign to his VM, he will only be able to select from the IPs that are available to him. So if you don't select a pool, he'll be able to automatically select an IP from the whole pool. But if you want to portion that up for each end user, then you can do that here. So that is a very sort of quick overview of OnApp for vCenter. So as I mentioned at the beginning, the important thing to do when you first install OnApp for vCenter is make sure you get your zone configuration right, because you want to organize that based on whether you're splitting data stores up between customers, whether you're splitting them up between tiers, and split up your networks and things like that. So get your zones configured first, then configure your buckets, and I'll just quickly show you the billing side of things, but there's more details on how to set billing on our website and in our documentation, because it's the same as we do for other compute resources like our KVM and Zen, but everything for billing is configured under the rate card, and you can set pricing based on which type of data store they're using. So you might have different pricing for fast, different pricing for slow. So you can set free amounts. So if they're paying a contracted amount where they get so much included in that contract, then you set the free amounts, and then we only charge the hourly price when they reach that free amount, when they go over the free amount. So you can charge based on compute here, CPU cores, memory. You can charge based on how much storage they're using, IOPS. And then with networks, you can charge per IP, and you can charge based on data received and data sent. So thanks for listening. If you've got any more questions, feel free to get in touch with us. We often release blogs and things on that to give you more information, but I hope this was useful, and look forward to speaking to you in the future.